Today we will be looking at the drafting of a basic body blouse with dart, and the item we'll be needing is a drafting paper. We need a ruler, the measurements, the curve ruler, marker, paper, scissors, and we also need the tape measure for our measurements. Then the measurements we'll be making use of is the back measurement, the bust measurement, the waist measurement, the hip measurement, the blouse length, the half length, nipple to nipple, and the bust point. Now let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is to draw out our vertical measurements. Is to draw out our vertical lines. But to start with, I'm going to take a border line on my drafting paper. You can take any measurement for your border line, and I'm going to take an horizontal border line and a vertical border line. Then after that, I will be taking the length of my blouse, which is the same thing as the blouse length, and that is 23 inches. I'll mark 23 inches, and I will square the line. Then the next vertical line I'll be taking is shoulder. This is my shoulder line, and this is my hip line. Then the next vertical line I'll be taking now is the chest line, and normally the chest line will be calculated by the armhole, so I'm going to skip that for now. So I'm going to take the breast point. The breast point I'm working with is 9.5, so I'm going to mark 9.5 from the shoulder line. Then after that, I will go to the waist. The waist I'm working with is 16.5. I'll mark 16.5, and then the blouse length. So I'll mark the lines 16.5, and I will square it. After drawing out taking the vertical measurement and drawing out my horizontal line, the next thing now is to impute my horizontal measurement. The back, for my measurement, the back is 15, and the back will be at the shoulder line, and I will be dividing 15 by 2. That will give me 7.5. So the back I'm working with will be 7.5. I start with my center line. This is my center line. I'm starting with my center line. Towards this side, I will measure 7.5. I mark 7.5. Then from that 7.5, I will come down by 0.75 centimeter. 0.75 inches, sorry. I will come down by 0.75 inches before I will measure my armhole. To measure the armhole, I need the bust measurement, and the armhole is usually bust measurement divided by 6 plus 2, and 37 divided by 6 plus 2 will be giving me something around 8 inches. So I'm going to take 8 inches for that. I will take 8 inches. So now measuring from the shoulder line to my 8 inches, I have 8.75 inches. So I will come back here and mark 8.75 inches. 8.75 inches. So I'm going to square the line now. That will be my chest line. So I have the chest line, the bust line. To draft out the armhole, let's first take the neckline. The neckline I'm taking is a circular neckline. So at this place, I'll be taking 3 or 2 3/4, but I'll be taking 3. If you want to know the depth of armhole neckline you want to take, I'm having 7.5. Whatever neckline you want to take must not be more than half of your shoulder line, because once it's more than half, the neckline will be wide, but I don't want a wide neckline, so I will be taking 3. And by the time I sew, this 3 is plus my seam allowance. By the time I sew, I'll be having 3.5. So the depth, I want a deeper depth, so I'll be taking 4.5. So by the time I sew here, I'll be having 5 inches. So with my French curve, I will be squaring the line. So after squaring the line, the next thing is to join my neckline point to the 0.75 that I've marked here. I will square it like this. Then I'm going to square a line down, and to know the line, I'm going to square this 7.5 that I square on the shoulder. I'm going to square it down. So I will take 7.5 inches here, and I will rule that to my chest line. I will rule that to my chest line, and after ruling that to my chest line, the next thing is for me to come up. At this point, I will come up by 1 inch to draw my armhole curve. So with this, I've drawn my armhole curve. So that is just the way to draw the armhole curve. So the next thing now is to input our dart before we input our horizontal measurement. So to input our dart, we need the nipple to nipple measurement, and the nipple to nipple measurement I'm working with is 7. Now I'm going to divide this 7 by 2. That will give me 3.5 plus seam allowance, 0.5 inch seam allowance. That will be 4 inches. So I'm going to square 4 inches down. I will square the 4 inches down. I'm starting from the bust line to the hip line. So after squaring the 4 inches down, the next thing now is to come to this bust line. At the bust line, I will come down by 1 inch. At the bust line, I will come down by 1 inch. Then at the waistline, I will come up by 2 inches. I hope you can see 2 inches up here, 1 inch down here. Then at this side, I will come up by half an inch to this side, half an inch to this side, depending on what you want to take, but you cannot take more than 1.5 inches in all. So I'm taking half an inch here and half an inch here. So I'm going to square the line now, and that will be our dart. So this is our dart. That is the way to draft the dart. So the next thing now is to input our horizontal measurement. So to input our horizontal measurement, I have my bust measurement is 37 inches. So 37 inches, I'm going to divide it by 4, and that will be 9.25 inches. So I'm going to take 9.25 inches at the waistline. 9.25 inches. Then my seam allowance, I'm going to use 1 inch for my seam allowance. Then I'll come to the waist. At the waist I'm working with is 32. 32 divided by 4, I'll be taking 8 inches. And I have 1 inch here that I'm going to take as that. I will add the 1 inch, then another 1 inch for the seam allowance, making 2 inches at the waist. Then at the hip line, the hip is 39. 39, if I divide that by 4, I have 9.75 inches. So I'm going to take my 9.75 inches, and also I'm going to take 1 inch for seam allowance, and I'm going to draw that. I'm going to square the line. So this place, I'm going to extend the line here to join to this place. Then I will now square the line from here to the waistline. So the chest line, I will square it down straight to the bust line. Then I will now join it down to the waistline before I join to the hip line. Now at the hip line, our body is a type of coffee. So at the hip line, I'm going to go up by 0.75 inches. Then at the leg of the dart, I'm going to come out by 2 inches. So I will now join this point to this point to form a type of cuffiness at the tip of my blouse. So this will give my blouse the cuffiness of the blouse, so that I won't need to redraft all these things on my back on another new drafting paper for my back bodies. So what I just have to do is, in case you're cutting, to make the work easier, you just take your back depth line, neckline here. The back neckline, I want a shorter back neckline, so I'll be taking 1.5 as my back neckline. So from here to here, I'm going to square out the 1.5. So this will be my back neckline, and this is my front neckline. Then at this armhole, you measure 8. Though some people don't use this, but for the fitness of the body, the armhole needs to be adjusted so that you will remove every excess that may or bulkiness at the armhole. But if you don't want to, you can just cut it down. But for me, I like removing a lot of bulkiness in my clothes. So I'm going to take half of the armhole. So then when getting to, after marking the half, you now come in by 0.75 inches. 0.5 to 0.75 inches, but in most cases I take 0.75 inches. So from this 0.75 inches, you're going to square the line from this point of your shoulder slope to this point. You're going to draw a straight line, and you're going to draw a sort of curved line from this point to the armhole. So that will give us the front armhole. So that will give us, so we have this line is our back armhole, while this back is our front armhole. So by the time, so before I cut, I'm going to take a zipper allowance for the back neckline. I told us that I'll be using a single draft for both back and front, so that in the process of drawing a draft, we won't waste much of our time on the draft. So for the zipper allowance, I'm just taking 1 inch, since the cloth is not having a lining. So I'm not turning it with lining. You must consider that if you are turning in with lining, so you can leave 1 inch allowance for the turning of the lining. but if you are not turning with lining, just take your seam allowance. So the next thing now is for me to cut, and to cut I'm going to cut out the back neckline first. So let's cut out the back neckline. So cutting out the back neckline, I'm going to start from the hip line. So watch how I cut, please. I'm going to start from the hip line. I will cut along a zipper allowance. So after cutting out my zipper allowance, I'm sorry, don't forget that when you want to cut on your fabrics, you need to add a seam allowance at the hip line. I've forgotten to do that. So when you place it, once you've not had a seam allowance, you make your sign that you need to add seam allowance. Those signs indicate that I need to add seam allowance here, only on this line when I'm cutting. So after cutting out the back bodies, I can just place this on my clothes and cut out. After using it to cut my clothes, then I will now fold the seam the zipper allowance. You fold in the zipper allowance. After cutting on your clothes for the back neckline, you can fold in and you can decide to cut. So you cut the zipper allowance away, so or you fold it in, but I'm cutting it away. For the back bodies, you're going to cut 2 pieces because there's a zip there. Then after that, I will cut the front neckline. I will cut on the front neckline. Then I will cut on the front armhole line. So I will cut on the front armhole line. You see how easy it is. With just a draft, I can cut out both my front bodies and my back bodies. So when you want to use this to cut on your fabrics, you will cut in fold. You cut the front in fold while you cut 2 pieces for the back, because there's a zipper at the back, but the front there is no zipper, so you cut that in fold. Thank you.